Have you ever wondered how to teach sex ed to your autistic or ADHD child, or even when to start? Maybe you're worried you'll say too much, start too early, or make them more curious. I get it. I've had those same worries too as a parent. I'm an autistic mum, and after years of helping families with these conversations, I've seen how different brains sometimes need different approaches. When my daughter first asked where babies came from, I had froze. And here's the funny thing, I was a sex therapist at the time. And that moment, it really hit me. I realized that even when we know the right answers, it can still feel impossible when it's our own child. But that experience also taught me something really important. Curiosity, not age, is the real sign that they're ready. Because here's the truth, sex ed isn't about teaching kids how to have sex. It's about helping them to understand themselves, their body, and their boundaries. So let's talk about how to teach sex ed the autistic way in a way that's clear, calm, and actually works. Let's start here. Sexuality is a part of being human. It's not just about sex, it's about identity, relationships, safety, and self understanding. Autistic kids develop sexually, just like everyone else. They just tend to experience and express it in their own way. They might not notice the subtle social rules that other kids pick up through friends, school, or TV. And that means they rely on us to teach those things directly and explicitly. And this is where a lot of parents freeze because they don't want to get it wrong. But silence, it doesn't actually protect our kids, it leaves them guessing. And starting early, it's actually not harmful, it's protective. And when kids have language for their body, they feel safer and more confident. So sex ed doesn't make kids more curious about sex. It gives them tools to understand what's already happening in their world. So instead of thinking of it as the talk, think of it as teaching life skills, things like privacy, hygiene, consent, relationships. These are all skills that build independence and safety. So let's talk about how autistic kids actually learn best and why the autistic way of learning makes sex ed easier for everyone. Most parents worry about finding the right words. They think they have to tiptoe around the topic to protect their child's innocence. But being vague actually makes things more confusing, especially for literal thinkers. I once, one, I once, go back to I once worked. I once worked with a family who told their autistic son that sex was a special cuddle. A week later, he started refusing hugs because he thought cuddles could make babies. And that's a perfect example of why euphemisms confuse and why real words protect. So when you talk about bodies, use clear language, penis, vulva, breasts, bottom, nipples. Say what each part is and what it does or what it's for. Autistic kids love clarity. They feel calmer when they know what words mean. They also need repetition. One conversation won't be enough. You'll, you'll probably need to explain things a few times before it actually sticks. Visuals can help too, so pictures, diagrams, storybooks, even social stories and scripts. You don't need anything fancy. Even a stick figure sketch on paper can sometimes work. And don't expect them to automatically transfer what they learn in one place to another. So, for example, if they learn about privacy at home, you might still need to reteach it for school or public bathrooms. And here's one of my strong beliefs. The autistic way of learning sex ed, structured, literal, and step by step, actually works better for everyone. It's actually the method that I teach over at Sex Ed Rescue. Let's now talk about what to do when curiosity shows up in unexpected places like the middle of the shopping centre. You're out in public, everything's fine, and suddenly your child's hand is down their pants. People look at you, look away awkwardly, and you freeze. I've had parents call me in tears after this, worried that it means something's wrong with their child. But here's the truth, it's not misbehaviour, it's curiosity, comfort, or just body awareness. And if this happens, take a deep breath, calmly say something like, that's something you do in private in your bedroom, not in public. Keep your voice calm and matter of fact. The goal is to guide and not scold, and then move on. You don't need to make it a big deal because shame doesn't teach, It actually shuts learning down. And look, I've got some great content over at Sex Ed Rescue that talks about how to handle masturbation or genital holding. I'll try to remember to include the links down below, but if I forget, which is likely because I do forget things having ADHD, tag me or comment and I'll send you the link. Now, back to what we're talking about. Moments like that, hands down the pants, can actually build trust if it's handled calmly. First of all, your child learns that you can handle anything they do or ask, and that means that they'll come to you next time instead of hiding whatever's going on. Let's talk about puberty now, because that's when everything changes and preparation can make all the difference for kids. Puberty can be confusing for any child, but for autistic and ADHD kids, it can feel like their body suddenly changed the rules. New smells, new sensations, new expectations. It can be really overwhelming. So start before the changes begin. Talk about each stage one at a time. Hair growth, periods, erections, mood changes, sweat. The goal is to make it predictable and less scary. And if your child's sensitive to smells, textures, or touch, prepare them for that too. Maybe they need unscented deodorant or different period products. Don't forget also, you're not alone with this. I have got some puberty resources over in the Sex Ed shop, and they simplify it all for you. They tell you what facts you can share with kids, and then they give you ideas on how to start the conversation as well. So you're not alone on this one, please. I never want anyone to feel alone with sex ed because I've got lots of free and paid resources to make it easier for you. Now, I want to just quickly talk about visual checklists because they can help with hygiene routine. And also with repetition, it can build confidence. So if your child's forgetting to wear deodorant or forgetting to do certain things like washing hair, because when kids, before puberty, if they don't wash their hair for a month, the hair doesn't look greasy. But if I don't wash my hair for a month, it will look very lank and greasy. And that's what puberty does. It kicks off the production of sebum and oil, so faces get oily and hair gets oily. And kids sometimes struggle to learn to adapt to that. So that's where you could have, like in the bathroom, Sunday night, hair night, and build in routines and sometimes steps of what to do in the morning, when they're in the bathroom before school. Brush teeth, deodorant, brush hair, clean undies if they never change their undies, things like that. Now, what I also want to talk about is that puberty also brings up new emotions. So we're talking about embarrassment, attraction to people, and curiosity about romantic feelings and sex. So help them to label those feelings so that they can understand them instead of feeling lost. And this is what sex ed really is. It's practical life preparation. It's not awkward talks. So let's talk now about how to build lasting safety and trust, because that's what keeps these conversations going. Here's the most important part. Your child's safety and confidence come from connection, not control. Teaching them early that their body belongs to them and explaining who can touch them and why, like a doctor or a parent for care reasons, and make a clear list of trusted adults they can talk to if something feels wrong or confusing. Autistic kids are unfortunately more vulnerable to sexual abuse. But look, education changes that. When kids know the right words for their body parts, when they understand privacy and consent, they're safer. And if they ever come to you with a tricky question, remember, curiosity is good. You don't have to answer it. It's okay to say, that's a great question, let's find out together. Or be curious and say, that's an interesting question. Why are you asking that? And when you do that, it actually shows them that this topic is actually safe to talk about, because being askable is what builds lifelong trust. So let's wrap this up, and I'll share what matters most when teaching sex ed to neurodivergent kids. So remember, sex ed for autistic and ADHD kids isn't one big talk you tick off a list. It's a series of short, calm, honest conversations that build up over time. It's about teaching safety, body awareness, and independence, not about sex. And your calm, matter-of-fact attitude, that's their strongest protection. So if you've been waiting for the right time, this is it. Start small, use real words, and just begin. And if you want your child to build healthy body awareness and boundaries from a young age, click the video on the screen and I'll help you to get started with that.